You're the man of this house, Onyx. Yes, this is my cat. And welcome to Inadequate Mother podcast. I am Hayley Brown, the host. So today is really just a bonus episode for me to really reach out to those mums that are feeling a bit pants around Valentine's Day. I've asked the wonderful Claire, who's a confidence coach and an absolute babe, who I would just really gel with and I'm really getting on with and I just love talking to. I've asked her to jump on because she is a single, not just solo, she's single mom, similar age to me. She's single, she's got a daughter, and she's just brilliant in her mindset and her, she's a coach, so she knows so much. So I'm really thrilled to have her on to talk about dating as mums. Dating as mums is a weird one. It's a difficult one, and it can bring up so many different things for everyone who operates so differently. So I'll be sharing kind of my experience. Claire will be sharing her experience, and hopefully it will make people feel less hopeless, because sometimes it can really just feel hopeless, like you're never going to meet someone, you're going to be alone forever. But the reality is it's all part of the journey. So let's welcome Claire Elizabeth to Inadequate Mother. Hello, my darling. It's absolute pleasure to see you. It always is. I've been describing you as my Me Too girl. When we talk, it's like, me too, me too, me too. So when I was like, I need to do a Valentine special for mums, single mums, solo mums, co-parenting mums, whatever type of mums, that just to help them around Valentine kind of feel a bit lighter about the whole issue around relationships, dating as a mom. Valentine can bring that up with ourselves, and I suppose we can just have a general chit chat and you give us your experience, I'll give you mine. At present, I am in a relationship and it's probably one of the healthiest I've had, be it that it's functioning quite well with my kids around. It's been 18 months. And so are you dating at all, Claire?
I am very single right now. Like the most single I've been.
What's very single? Yeah, clarify that.
When I say very single, I mean I have officially been single for sort of a year and a half, I'd say. Well, no, really, probably coming up to 2 years. And I'm very I'm like a sensible person when it comes to the endings of relationships. I really take time out. Like I'm not a jumping into something else sort of person. So I did take a lot of time out last year just to process that, work on myself, overanalyze that relationship and why it didn't work and all the things we like to do where we do that.
Was your daughter around that relationship? How old's your daughter again? Remind the audience.
So she's going to be 10 on Friday. So yeah, the guy that I was last in a relationship with, we actually lived together, which I have not lived with anyone since I left, my ex-husband, who is my daughter's dad. So she has met one other boyfriend, but I've kept them quite separate. So that was all part, I think, of when it fell apart, why I really took space from it, because we lived together and it didn't work. And I felt that huge mum guilt of, oh my God, I've so carefully spent nearly a decade protecting her. And I felt I had fucked up, basically, which I did and I didn't. But, the reason the relationship broke down was him.
It was all him.
So we can say that I should have seen red flags. I should have not moved in with him. And that's the stuff I own. And that's the stuff I go to therapy about and be like, why did I do that? Even though my intuition was ting, 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 ting.
I think so many people can relate to this, though. Even people in relationships are just getting so difficult. And you can ask anyone, if we, look at the society now and the society, relationships just aren't functioning as well as they used to. And it's almost like we're being wired to be independent and single.
The problem I feel with dating as a single parent is more often than not, due to our lack of time, we end up dating because we go on dating apps. Now, not always. If you're lucky enough to have an in real life meeting, I am envious of you, because the life I live, where the area I live in, like, there's not hunks walking around here. Like, they are not the sort of men I would date. They're married, they're elderly, and I work a lot from home and I do a school run twice a day. So I'm just not bumping into and having meet cute situations. So you end up doing the online dating thing. Now, there's so much on the internet about this. People going, oh, it's not the dating apps, they're not the problem. They kind of are. Like, there's other things that lead into that. But with dating apps, I think that there are a hell of a lot of quite broken people or wounded people or people that aren't ready for relationships on them. And that's the risk of it. And I think that was the issue with the person I was with. We met on an app. We did kind of know each other a few years before, but from an app. And it all moved very, very quickly. And I was like, this is it. This is my Cinderella story. This is what I've been waiting for my whole life.
But it's like there's a lot of highs and lows with dating apps. Like, it becomes addictive, and the stimulation from the phone rather than from a face-to-face interaction is something to be wary of. Like,
it's the fantasy. We create narratives. The reason it's so addictive and exciting is because usually we've created a story about who they are and it's not them.
And then when you meet them, you're like, literally, shit.
You're like in love via WhatsApp, and then you meet them and you're like, oh, what? You're not at all what I thought.
And none of that involves the very thing that defines you as a mum. Like, this is just like, it's almost like a way of having a separate
life.
It's like, oh, kids are in bed, let me just be Hayley on Tinder. And just, it's a way of like being not mom and just, but then when you have to go, okay, well, I do want a relationship. I do want to get married and live with someone. So let's take it it doesn't happen that way. It doesn't kind of, and then you go through the cycle of just feeling inadequate. And I think that again in itself, I mean, it's definitely the area I've felt inadequate over the years, especially with the fact that my kid's dad has a really successful relationship. And my kids now, one of them being an adult and the other one being a young teen, are both looking at their mum like, Mum, why can't you do what Dad's done and just, find someone? And it's infuriating because I remember thinking exactly the same thing to my mother, God rest her soul.
Well, can I just say that there are plenty, and I'm not saying this for your ex, but there's plenty of people say they look successful relationships. Just because a relationship's gone on for 5 years doesn't mean that it's brilliant. And it doesn't mean that it would meet your needs. My ex-husband's, got one kid, another one on the way, remarried, got with her really quite quickly after we split. But he's no different. Like, he'll be the same guy that I was married to. And that's the only difference is that obviously, well, I say that I was with him a very long time, 13 years, but that obviously suits her. They're more aligned, like the things that he lacked that bothered me, maybe that's not a problem for her. And I think that's great. But like, we're all different people and some people work with us and some people don't. But the way I look at it, I know what you're saying, Henny, because I could be like, oh, look, she's got my ex-husband and they're together. But I just think he didn't meet my needs and he wouldn't meet my needs now. And that doesn't mean he's a bad guy, but he just didn't meet them.
Do you not think he's changed at all? Could it be because the reality is I don't know my ex now. He's a different person. Would you not say that people grow and change and maybe
well, he might have lost, he might have learnt some very big lessons for what he screwed up in our relationship, which was huge. So there was a very messy, big ending to that was quite catastrophic and down to him. So I really hope that he has and those lessons have been learned. I think probably he values his now, partner more than maybe he did me. And that's probably because he lost me.
And that's the difficult thing, I think, for relationship. And I am in a place now where I'm so comfortable with who I am and I love myself enough to be able to laugh. I laugh with my friend. I went to a dinner her kids' dinner party, and we were like single mom best friends. And she's really good friends with her ex and his new partner and his new kids. I am with my ex and his new partner, his kids, again, very civil, everything's fine. But these women are amazing. Like, they've got the most amazing women. So me and my friend just look at each other and go, was it us? Because I'm like, they're so nice. They're such good, and not like little flower, not like wallflowers that would take all the shit. Like, they're strong, intellectual, beautiful, stunning people. I'm like, how has he got her? Was it me? Was I the problem?
It may have been that he grew from your relationship and became a better partner. But I just think, I mean, what I would say is saying, do you not think he's changed? Like, I have drastically changed. Like, it was 10 years ago we split. I wouldn't have this business. I wouldn't be a confidence coach. I wouldn't have a podcast. I'd have none of it. I lived in his shadow because he was a musician. He was a rock star. He was in a cool band. And like, my job was just to like support him. And he never asked me to do that. But that was kind of the dynamic we went into. And that's my shit. Like, that was me getting validation from being with someone like him, like a cool guy. And when we split, that was really where my self-development journey started. Because I was like, who am I? Like, because I feel less than not being with him. And that doesn't make sense because I like myself. But it was because so much was wrapped up in my identity of being the wife of this guy who I thought was really cool and clever, and he's very talented, and he's all those things. But because that ended, I had to go glow up. I had to be like, right, what am I good at? Why am I not going after a career? Why am I not trying harder? And we wouldn't work now based on that. Like, I'm a totally different person to who he met, you know?
Has dating helped you? Because I would say, as an extrovert, and you yourself has said that you're an extrovert, and I would argue to anyone that would try and tell me, Hayley, just be on your own. Because I've got so many friends, and I had a real problem being on my own and not having that attention from a significant other when I was on the dating apps or doing whatever. And they would like encourage me, and I'm like, I'm an extrovert. I need people. I can't learn about myself if I haven't got people around me to stimulate me or give me energy. It just doesn't work. I really felt that I needed that. But now I'm a little bit older and maybe a little bit more wiser. I'm like, you could have, as an extrovert, found energy differently.
Yeah, I think that's a pattern. I think so you and I are two different extroverts. So I'm an introverted extrovert. So I get my energy from being alone. So I get energy from being on my own so that then I can go be really sociable and extroverted. But if I didn't have the alone time, I'd be burnt out and find that exhausting. Whereas you get your energy from being around people so that then you can go be extroverted. So they're two different things. But I had the exact same loop as you. So when Violet, my daughter, was very young, I was constantly chatting to someone, going on dates, having sort of, 4 to 6 month things with guys that were never like, well, they were kind of situationships, I suppose. But I would be quite emotionally.
What was that?
A situationship. So
what's a situationship? I've never heard that.
So it's never got to the relationship status of being like, you're my boyfriend and I'm your girlfriend, but you basically act like you are in a relationship. So they're basically getting all of the wifey girlfriend stuff without really that official commitment.
So not just a bed buddy, but just
full on dating.
A relationship together, without commitment, basically.
Yeah, I'd say the sex side would just be like, that would be a friend with benefits sort of thing. Situationships are worse. They're more insidious than that because you feel like they're your boyfriend, but they're not.
You're pretending.
And then it's not that. It's that you think it's going that way. You don't, as women don't get in situationships because we think it's a situationship. We think it's going to become a relationship.
And they're going to look after our kids and move in and then marry us and we're all going to be okay.
So as I've grown and self-developed and grown as a person and my self-esteem's grown, I don't attract situationships anymore at all. So that's interesting. So my love life is dry, like so dry, because I'm only really attracting, I think, all or nothing situations. So like those guys that were like casual, they saw me as that. I'm not giving that energy out anymore. So they kind of realize like, oh, well, it's not going to be that with her. So I just, wouldn't bother. I'm also being very intentional and specific when I do date. I'm not dating at the moment, but when I am on like an app or something, I'm very intentional. Like I'm looking for like a long-term partner. I celibate date. I don't sleep with them for ages.
So what response have you got? Because I know so many women that would be scared to say that, and men just kind of drop off and you not.
But good, they've saved me the hassle. They've already announced themselves as a bit of a knob. So good. It's quite a good filter. I'm not saying you don't ever sleep with them, and I'm not even saying you have to officially be like going out. But I think that I definitely wait until I feel safe with that person emotionally.
What would you say to someone that maybe feels that they have those physical needs to be met, and they're trying to just meet those initially before they're meeting their emotional, mental needs, because those aren't even things that they can have time to address, and maybe they're just physically going out to,
So work out what you want.
Is that healthy though? Would you say that is healthy? Or
I don't think there's anything wrong with casual sex. I think if that's what you want, that's absolutely fine. We all have itches we need to scratch. Like, that's fine. But it's about being honest with yourself about that, rather than doing I see a lot of friends and people that date kind of being like, yeah, I'm cool with it just being like casual, like that's what I want. And it's like, it's bullshit. You want a husband. So why are you sleeping with these people? Because you're giving them the girlfriend benefits without the commitment. I'm just selective. I'm very selective about who I allow in my intimate space in that sense. I think that, at the moment, it's just not, I don't know. I think it's difficult when you really are attracted to somebody. It's way harder to be like, right, I'm going to be very boundaried about this. Because when there's chemistry, there's chemistry.
It's very much a culture where I was from that era of boss bitch, independent woman. Miss Independent came out, that song with, was it Neo? And, you were like, I'm going to be independent. I'm going to operate like a man in almost a sense. Yeah. Like, men have treated me this way. I'm going to just treat them back the same way. I'm not going to overthink it. And I think the reality is, no matter how much you might get in that mindset as a woman, you are biologically wired to catch feelings. And you will catch feelings, because it's almost like innately we have that physical connection with someone, because it's all about reproduction, and we want to find that partner that's going to keep us safe, to ensure the safety of our offspring. So I can raise my offspring with the best partner. So we're wired to want that. And if we deny ourselves and we just kid ourselves that we don't catch feelings, you're just kidding yourself in your whole entire makeup as a woman.
Yeah. I think for me, I just think how I look at relationships and dating and what I want from a partner is so different from what I felt, say, 8 years ago when my daughter was young. I was really 8 years ago focused on someone hot, someone really fit, someone I was really attracted to, someone that really desired me, that was very chemistry, sexual, someone who was going to like take me out, and I was going to, you know what I mean? It was just very based on that. For me now, my dating selection is like, how is my nervous system around you? Do you calm my nervous system? I literally do that now. Because if you're making me anxious, guaranteed that'll be the theme of the relationship.
What about if they've got kids? Like, how do you, like, for me, I got to a point where I was like, I'm only dating dads, because for me to have that connection with that person, they need to understand what it's like to be a parent. And then also, a lot of the guys that I was dating were basically saying, they'd said initially that they weren't sure about wanting kids. And then later down the line, when we got close and they realised how great my kids were, they were like, oh, I would love a kid. You've made me realise I want kids. And I'm like, amazing. I'm so happy for you. Do you think you can give me one? I'm like, no, actually, no. So there's been a few relationships that have had to end because of that. And I'm really proud of myself for that. as well, because
not dragging it out.
I think that women that don't really look at that and just type, like, I could have had another child, they're the best thing that's ever happened to me. But realistically, for the big picture, yeah, you really have to look at that hard and look at that situation on your own.
You know what's really interesting? I have never successfully dated another dad. The 2 serious relationships I had, they didn't have kids. They did both want kids, but back then I was open to more kids too, because it was years ago and I always wanted quite a big family. So went out with a guy for a couple of years, really lovely guy. We've talked about him before, Mr. Nice. And he wanted kids, he wanted to settle down, he ticked all the boxes. And the most recent one that I moved in with, he didn't have any, but he did want children. And they both were great with my daughter. But I actually found it easier to date men that didn't have children because they had more time and more flexibility. So when I was like, these are my child-free weekends, they could be cool with that. They were like, cool, I'll go do all my sporty man stuff on the weekends that you've got your little one. And then we'll see each other. And it was like easier to actually see them. Whereas men that have children, first of all, if your weekends don't match, you're screwed. You may as well just not even bother. That's a real blocker for a lot of single parents.
I know, I have been that type of casual, do you want to swap weekends? Like, me and my sister had to have our weekends the same as well. And when they went off sync, we were like, shit, because we could only go out with each other. So, yeah.
The weekend thing is a real blocker. And I've just found as well that I don't know if it was the energy I was in at the time, but I just seemed to attract sort of like quite a lot of sad dads that were like...
A lot of broken people are on...
They'd left marriages they weren't happy in. Usually they'd left, but they had mass guilt about not living with their children, which clearly is obviously, you get it, right? To go from living with your kids every day to not. So it would just, I'd find they weren't very boundaried. Like when they were supposed to not have their children, they'd be like, oh, well, the ex wanted me to have them, so I'm going to have them now. And because they had all this guilt. So then you wouldn't really see them. It just didn't really work. And like, obviously you want a dad whose kids are their number one priority. Like, absolutely. Like, I would, you know, when you meet those guys that have got kids, but they're like, yeah, I'll drop my kids and I'll see you. It's like, red flag, you know?
Red flag.
Yeah. So it's finding a balance. But for me, I have dated 2 men that haven't had children. I think going forward, I think I'm going to end up settling down probably with someone that has a kid or has children already. Because where I am in my life now, I'm 41. I'm not really planning on having any more children. I don't even know if I can. I feel like my time is done for that chapter. And
you never know.
Yeah, you don't. I'm not closing it off. I'd never say I absolutely wouldn't. But I think that you have to be honest about whether you even could. Like, I don't know. I don't know how many good eggs I've got left, Hayley. Like,
well,
I had a baby 10 years ago.
So when I was dating, I was pleasantly surprised. I was surprised at the fact that men didn't have the time, because it's almost like men that were dating or I was meeting up with had cottoned on to the fact that if they did half the work, they didn't have to then pay child maintenance for their child. So there's almost like this new wave of dads that are all doing 50% to save the having to pay child maintenance. And now they know that they can do it. Whereas when I was dating, that wasn't the case. Men didn't have that confidence to be single dads. So it was like refreshingly delightful to know that these dads were doing 50% of the work. And I was like, wow, what a culture shift, but massively annoying, because I was like, well, this isn't going to work. I'm not going to have time to see you. So it's so hard. And I just hope moms realise. I mean, I want to give hope in this episode. I don't want to just be like, there's not a lot of positives.
There is hope, but I think what I would always say to people is when you're a single parent, you have very limited you time as it is. So really spend it wisely. Don't just fill your time with dates so that you feel validated. Like, only date people that actually are going to potentially add to your life or potentially be someone you would date longer term. because you're important and your time is important, and you're over giving every day as a single parent to your children anyway, and your emotional cup will be empty because you're constantly giving it to your kids. So spend that time either resting, doing joyful things for yourself, or dating people that actually are kind of filling that cup back up, and it's with the right intention. I think that there's nothing wrong with dating and being excited about finding your person. I think that to find someone, you do need an open heart. You don't want to be in that avoidant energy of like, oh, my ex screwed me over, all men are arseholes. Like, spoiler alert, that's not going to find you a good guy, that energy. And it's really difficult because if you've been messed around, and I definitely have in the past, I know how hard it is to shift that off. But I think if you're in that energy, that isn't the right time to date. I think that's when you go hang out on your own, nurture yourself, love yourself, hang out with your bestest mates, get in a better energy to then attract in someone on your level. That would be my advice for that.
It's really hard. For me, I always found the loneliness of being a solo parent, and it was very much a fear associated with my mum, who was a solo parent, and her lonely feeling. So I just had this immense fear that I shouldn't be alone. And I have had amazing girlfriends, and I would say that's one thing that she did do well, is that she always had girlfriends around her. And I think realistically, if we just wire our heads to not overthink the romantic side of relationships and just really nurture all the other types of relationships that we have, be it with ourselves, be it with exercise, be it with our friends, and even the guys that I have dated or I've met, and I've said, well, this isn't going to work for me in terms of a long-term relationship, but I'm really glad I met you. And, you know, I've had even failed relationships that I would consider soulmates now. They're people that have, and a soulmate for me is just someone that's impacted me in a positive way. And I have had lots of relationships like that. I have had that close connection, and they've helped mold my soul to be a better Hayley. And I am grateful for those relationships. Yes, they didn't go off into the sunset and last a million years, but maybe that's not, you know, for everyone.
Sometimes people just come into your life to serve a purpose for a short period of time. And it doesn't even have to be a soulmate connection. One of the most, I'm happy to share this, I've never spoken about this before, but one of the things that on my confidence journey that really shifted me out of being a victim of being screwed over by an ex, of like my long-term, my ex-husband, was when, probably 2 years after that ended, having a fling with a guy that was like 10 years younger than me. He was way younger than me. He looked like a gladiator. He was absolutely gorgeous. He was hilarious. He was a local lad. He was really career focused because he was that age, where obviously he's not thinking about getting married. He was thinking about making money. And I had a very young child and not much time. And I just wanted to be adored and desired. And because we had such good boundaries around it, and it was very much like that's all it was. It went on for about 4 months, and it was so good for me because I was just like, this guy is like so hot. And I just was in such a place of feeling like, especially when there's been betrayal and things like that have gone on, you can feel less than, and like you weren't picked, and maybe you're not very attractive, or maybe people don't fancy you. And he just cured all that with a fling. And I did on that occasion manage to not catch feelings because we had boundaries. We didn't sleep over each other's houses. We would be very respectful of each other. We stayed in touch. If we bump into each other now, we speak. He was so great, and he's such a nice bloke. And it was just, but it had a sell-by date. I think those things always do. They can't go on too long because then you would potentially get feelings. But I see that as it was a real empowering, because that's not me. That casual thing is not me.
Was it around lockdown?
No, it was way before that. It would have been like 2017. So when my daughter was really quite young. But it really brought me back to life. It did. And it made me feel more confident and that I was attractive. And obviously after that, I went and did a real self-esteem journey, and I started to learn more about the difference between self-esteem and confidence. And yeah, it was one thing him thinking I was fit, and that made me feel good. But now I learned how to just love myself anyway, and like my soul and who I am. But I definitely don't see any problem in that stuff if in the short term it makes you feel so much better. And I think that, yeah. And then I have things like you, Hayley, that were like, 4 or 5 months, but they had an impact on me because they reminded me that like, oh, I could love again. I could feel that again. That enough is sometimes all you need. Not everything needs to be a successful long-term relationship to be relevant to your journey. Do you know what I mean?
So let's touch on talking about how you've had these kind of really invigorating, stimulating like flings and using the apps and things like that, and your confidence journey. I would say there's a lot of women that maybe dare to use the apps and they're not getting kind of the response that they want. I mean, I know, in terms of my appearance and stuff like that, I know how to dress sexy. I can, I'm quite confident visually. So, if I want to get matches, it's whereas I think some women, they don't know how to carry themselves in that confident way, and then it can affect their self-esteem and stuff like that. So my heart really goes out to women that struggle socially, as well as not even just in the looks or how they appear, but also like having that conversation and not being able to connect with someone that just, I just really want to, I don't know, what would you say to, because I know you're a confidence coach, so what would you say to women that struggle in that area?
I would say with talking about dating app profiles and you knowing kind of how to be sexy and attract like likes and stuff, like I totally agree. Like you're basically marketing yourself. You're your own PR.
Yeah, I was groomed from a child, and I actually did one podcast on pretty privilege and how it's not a privilege. And if you hold value to your appearance in such a way, and like 80s babies, if you were born in the 80s, that is what you were told. You were, oh, you're pretty, you've got a good pair of tits, you'll be fine, go find a footballer. Oh, you'll be good. Page 3 girls. I was hanging out with literally women that went out, their whole income was to go out, sleep with a footballer, and then sell the story the next day. That was their actual income.
I think it depends on like who you are as a person. And I think I've always been someone that is about connection. Like I'm very curious. I love to connect. I like an intimate connection. So even if, even with that casual thing, like we clicked as people, we had the same sense of humor. I respected him. He respected me. I still liked him as a person. But I think regarding confidence with dating, I always say, as hard as it is to be rejected with dating, if you're being yourself, at least you're saving yourself hassle, because they're rejecting you because you're not aligned. When you're showing up as like, so say for example, me and you, Hayley, we set up a profile, we've got our legs and our tits out, and we're like, yeah, we're sexy. And we'll get all these likes, and we'll get all these young lads, and we'll get all these men that are like, yeah, you can be like, I get these old men on TikTok, my coach, and like, I'll be your sugar daddy. And like, it's probably a bot, but it's tempting, man. Like, and you're just like, no. But we could do that. But I want someone who wants me, like my soul, my personality, who I am, that likes my values, like the legs and the tits and stuff. That's just a perk. That's an extra thing to me. But I think you need to lead with authenticity always, even if you're someone who is introverted, socially awkward. Still be yourself. You can definitely do techniques to learn how to communicate a bit better and learn how to like hold conversations better. But you shouldn't pretend to be extroverted and mask like to such a level you're exhausting yourself, because you want to match someone who's like is like you, like who's maybe a bit socially awkward or like really like finds that attractive, likes the fact that you're shy, and you want it to be aligned. If you want something to work long term, there's no point faking it.
And also putting in the effort. Because anyone that's just going to pick up a phone and only engage with the people that have all those communication skills, have all the photographic skills and can put up a good profile, and then it's just easy, is that someone that's going to be beneficial in a relationship? Exactly. That having that someone that has that insight into the realities of people, and that is what is showing up, popping up on my SMS whatever it's called now, my DMs right now, isn't necessarily what they're like in person. So if that person, so for all women that have felt that rejection, if that person has rejected you, they're just very one-dimensional right now, and they really don't possess the skills required for a relationship, be it, knowing that connection takes time, knowing someone takes time. And if you are being yourself, you just need to give yourself a big frigging pat on the back and just know that you are someone that deserves love. You are someone that is loved. And you ultimately have to love yourself.
A really good tip with rejection, with dating, is first of all, don't emotionally invest in someone. Like, meet people where they are, like meet people at their level. So when it comes to effort, the amount you're thinking about them, the amount of contacting them, like match their vibe on that. Don't get overexcited and create a whole story about them. But secondly, like, how, in general, and I'm not lying here, rejection doesn't massively bother me, because how I see it is rejection is just redirection. Now, I'm not talking about long-term relationships. Like, if I got rejected in a long-term relationship, that would obviously hurt. But I'm talking about dating situations where you might have 3 or 4 dates, or date for 6 weeks, and then they kind of usually phase you out. They don't even have the balls to kind of say. And I always just sit with that and go, thank you, universe, you've just moved them out of the way for me because they weren't for me. Thanks for saving me the time. Redirection, it's just a redirection, rejection is. So just see it as they're not for you and you're looking in the wrong direction, and now you can look in the right direction. And just don't take it on a gut, like, painful level, because the reality is that guy doesn't know you. He doesn't really know you yet. So, he's not rejecting you. He's probably rejecting himself. There's probably something in you where you scared him. He's like, oh, she's really great. And they go avoidant and they panic. I've had so many micro rejections in my time, especially last year. But I think it was because I was in quite an avoidant energy, because I wasn't really that ready yet. And in that situation, if it keeps happening again and again and again, and you keep getting a lot of avoidant men, that is maybe the time to look within. Because I had to do it, and I'm a coach, and I had to go, it's a bit weird, like I just keep having the same sort of thing happen. And I wasn't bothered about any of them, and that was the problem. I'm getting in a mood about being micro-rejected by men that I didn't even really like anyway. So I'm like, well, they just got the vibe that I didn't like them too. Like, I'm the problem, it's me. Like, I'm not really putting much effort in because I'm not really feeling fully ready for a relationship, and they're picking up on it. And therefore, they're mirroring that. So that's why I took myself out for a bit, because I was just like, it's not fair. I think you've got to be fair with dating. Like, are you ready? Do you have the capacity to meet someone? Are you in a decent self-esteem place, or have you got crippling low self-esteem? If you do, that's not the right time to date. That's the time to kind of do a bit of work on yourself. So yeah, I would just say there's loads of things you can do, but keeping rejection in check and being totally authentically you as much as you can at the start is always what I would say with dating.
100%. And I think understanding, like we said at the start, understanding the power of the phone. I was talking about it today on my Instagram, Hayley Brown and Co. And I put up there that, I've sought validation through social media. I have done that. And for us to deny that we don't do that is just ludicrous. It is a validating place. And I think self-validation is ultimately what you'll need to achieve. And how you achieve that is different for you and your journey. But just acknowledging that, you might get some likes, and you might get a good conversation going, you might match with someone, and that is going to give you a form of validation. And that's amazing. And you can use that, but know that it is superficial in its entirety, really. It is superficial, and ultimately you have to self-validate. So wherever you're showing up authentically, maybe social media or to work in the office or wherever you feel more authentic and you can be your true self, that is where you'll find your, self-validation. If you can do it on dating apps, amazing. I don't really think that people, I don't know, I haven't been on them for a couple of years, but I definitely tried with my social media to be as authentic and me as possible. And then the self-validation comes with the ability to be yourself. That's all it is. It's the ability and the capacity to really be who you want, no matter who likes or loves you.
Yeah. I think the thing is with the getting validation for social media, which we all do to a limit. And I think that the thing with it is that it's very short-term validation. So then we have to do it again. Because we're like, well, I like that feeling, but it didn't last very long. So I'm going to post another, thirst trap photo for people to like, and then that feels good. Oh, but it's worn off again, so I need to do it again. And that's the problem with when you're doing that with dating apps, is it's short term, the high of people liking you, etc. And then you get into those addictive patterns of constantly being on apps and constantly needing a date or constantly having these WhatsApp romances that go nowhere, because that's better than nothing. When you're doing patterns like that, that's when you're like, hang on a minute. That's when you need to take a bit of a look, because there's something going on with your self-esteem where you don't feel enough. And you only feel enough with these short-term validation dopamine hits, but they don't last long because you're still not believing you're enough. And to believe that you're enough, you have to keep posting more photos or matching with more men. And the beauty is in feeling enough. Like I think I've never felt more enough in my life, but I'm 41 and it's taken a while to get to this point. And I really don't feel that I have to be in a relationship to be deemed a success. And I think that's something else to talk about. Society makes us feel that if we're single, there's something wrong with us. How about I just have standards? How about I actually just have walked away from shit relationships when other people would have stayed? One of my really happily married mates, and I honestly think their marriage out of anyone I know is like one of the best. She said to me, we saw each other over New Year, and she just said, the thing is, I just think you're so brave because you just walk away from things rather than, I mean when people treat me badly. If people are treating me badly and I've given them chances to kind of change their ways and they're still not doing it, she's like, you are not afraid to be alone. And she is just like, I think that's amazing. I know so many people that are in miserable things where people overstep their boundaries. And that comes from me actually knowing that being single is pretty great. And I don't have that fear of like, oh, I'm lonely or I'm lame and like society are going to feel sorry for me and pity me. And, and I just think I've got a great life. Okay, I'll just go back to doing it on my own for a bit until someone better comes,
I was definitely part of that group of feeling. I'm definitely still, I'm in a relationship now that I'm loving. It's a healthy relationship, but we do have our issues in terms of where we move forward into the next chapter. And yeah, I definitely think over the years that has made me. I've been scared of being not necessarily alone because I've lived on my own for over 11, 12 years. I'm actually more scared now of living with someone, which is crazy because if you'd have told me that years ago, I'd be like, no, I'd love to live with someone, share the bills, everything. And yes, I do want to, but it gets to a point. And I think that's something to acknowledge is as moms, we will get to a point where it's hard for us to live with someone when we've been functioning on our own for so long.
There becomes a real peace with living alone. So I've only lived officially alone with 2 years. So prior to that, I owned a house with my sister when things ended with my marriage. She came out of a long-term relationship too. So we just thought, let's just buy a house together. So we bought a house together, which was great because it got us both on the property ladder. But it was kind of, it wasn't real life because I had someone there that, if Violet was poorly, my sister could help. She most of the time, it was always me getting up in the night and stuff, but she was kind of like a second mum.
I lived with my sister. Another Me Too moment. When my daughter was young, before I had Ava, me and my sister lived together. Yeah.
So I had that support. And a lot of the time it was invisible support. I was still doing it all, but I knew she was there. And that was a real comfort. And especially when you have a young child and you're a woman, it's quite scary sleeping alone in a house when you haven't done that before. And things like that used to freak me out. But also from an element of dating, it was so much easier to date when I lived with her. Because I'd just be like, when are you home this week? And I would do the bedtime routine and put my little girl to bed, but she's in the same house as her. And then I wouldn't have to panic about rushing back, babysitters, and I don't have that option anymore. So that makes it way harder because I'm like, well, they really have to be worth it because I have to get a babysitter. So it's only been the last 2 years, but I think that it's really interesting what's happened because since we've lived fully alone and things ended with the last relationship, it was a real like shock to my system to begin with. But now, like me and my daughter, we love it. We just do what we want when we want. The house is peaceful. We have fun. We have our own routines. There's no one sort of stepping in with their routines. And I think it will be a bit of an adjustment now to be like, oh, okay, yeah, I've got to live with someone again, you know?
I'll be honest, I think it gets harder as they get older. Well, not so much harder in the sense of meeting people because they will have that independence, you know, they'll be at school, they'll be doing clubs, things like that, and you'll have more time. But they're acutely aware of what dating is. They know and they understand things. They start to understand you more. So if you've not got your shit together and things are unraveling and you're doing this in an unhealthy way, they see it. So you've got a bigger responsibility to make sure you are dating in a healthy way and also opening up that communication where they kind of understand the situation, but not doing it to an oversharing level where they become uncomfortable. The connections they may or may not have with anyone you're dating, that's difficult, I think, with teenagers. And I think just being open and honest, again, communication, they're going to want you to be happy ultimately.
Yeah.
And also like they understand everything. Like, so with the little ones, you could hide, like you could just like put them to bed. They're not going to know who's round or whatever. Now my kids go to bed after me. So that scenario it doesn't happen. And
it happens way earlier than you think because my daughter's 9. She can pick up on everything. She's been picking up on stuff since she was about 6 or 7. You know, like, mummy, you seem sad, or mummy, you're distracted, mummy, you're like, they know when your energy's off or it's being consumed by something else, or you're stressed, or you're in a relationship that's not working, or like someone's not texted you back. You know, like that energy, and you think, oh, so frustrating. I've even let that bother me.
I can't believe how much energy I wasted and I allowed them to see. When I think about all the interactions I had with people, I'm just like, why on earth did I waste my energy? But again, for women that have done that,
it's part
of the journey. And sometimes we need people, we need community, realistically, to unlock ourselves. And that's what we're lacking. And relationships are just an extension of the community we require. And I am never be regretful. That's just, I don't think we should ever live with any regrets, or especially any shame. If you've had a crappy relationship or things didn't work out, or, you know, you just felt like a bit embarrassed about the fact that you wanted to date someone, maybe they weren't necessarily right, but you still wanted to do it anyway, it's okay. It's a journey, and kids need to know that that's okay. Because to be yourself and to learn and to make mistakes, it's all okay.
We're all humans having a human experience. And there's that quote, isn't there, that just because you're a parent is still our first time on earth as well.
Yeah, with the older children and teenagers, obviously, even with the younger children, actually, forming those connections with other people, but also them liking the energy you have around someone else because it's less intense. So with my kids, all of me in my entirety is feminine energy, masculine energy, run this house shit energy. And it can be a lot. And I can be a lot because I have to be a lot. I have to function a lot. So when someone else is in the picture, and especially with Matt being around the way he has, it almost diffuses that. And I don't have to be so much. I mean, half the time he zones out. And if me and the girls have some kind of confrontation, you'll get a look on his face and he'll just like zone out and just pretend he's not there. But even just his presence diffuses and kind of dilutes my energy so that my kids probably enjoy me more. And what I think I want to say to mums is that that's okay. That is not your fault that you have to be so much and that it's intense and your kids are feeling that intense version of you as a single mom. And I imagine that that's going to mean a lot of confrontation or a lot of intense feelings that don't necessarily look great or feel great, but your connection to your kids as they grow into adulthood is going to be as intense and as strong. And I feel it's going to benefit my relationship with my kids as they grow into adults because we've gone through so much and they know me so well. I know them. Not one part of me has been diluted over the duration of our journey because it's just been me. But it can feel a lot, and it can feel like when someone else is around, it just feels better.
If you weren't a lot, I think it's interesting the words we use to describe ourselves. I see a lot as a good thing.
Yeah, like I do now.
You're a lot of good things.
But explain that to a teenage girl.
But that's why your teenage girls are sassy.
Yeah, and I wouldn't
because
change
you've taught them. Like, you're a lot in the sense of a lot of good stuff, and you've taught them that empowered stuff. So guess what? Those girls have grown up with voices that they're not afraid to use. They feel heard by you. You can have those conversations and stuff.
Yeah, and this is what I'm holding on to is like, yes, they didn't have that, 2.2 nuclear family experience, but they have had an intense relationship with their mom, which I know is going to not die ever. Like, it's not ever going to go away. And I hope to maintain that. And so happy Valentine's Day to all the mothers out there that are either single, solo, co-parenting, having just those moments where they just might not feel
nurtured, or you're feeling a little bit, if you're feeling a bit like that on Valentine's Day, honestly, like, go treat yourself. I am such a believer in like buying yourself a box of chocolates, go get yourself some flowers, like just do it for yourself because you deserve it. And we don't, although I totally understand the loneliness element and wanting somebody else to appreciate us and be nurturing, but that day is coming. It's a mindset. It's a, yes, I'm single on this Valentine's Day, but it's temporary. But I will have Valentine's Days where I'm in a loving relationship, and it's just going, I'm going to value this now. I'm going to make the most of this. I'm going to eat the food I want to eat tonight, and I'm going to do that, It's knowing that it's when you get into that forever mindset, I'm going to be single forever, and you go into that victim mode, that's when you're going to kill your own vibe.
I think that's what I would say to my younger self, my 30s, because I'm thinking about us now as 40-year-old women, feeling amazing, wishing I'd felt this at 30. So any moms out there that are in their early 30s, like, it is just part of the process. It is feeling shit is part of the process. You're going to learn about yourself feeling shit. You're going to learn about yourself being lonely. Sit in the sad emotions, sit in them fed up emotions, but just know that it's not always going to be like that. You will get to a place where you're absolutely rocking it. And that is when you will attract your person, because that is the version of you that you want to be. And that needs to be attracting the person that you want to spend your time with.
Yeah, and not judging yourself for whatever phase that you're in. So if you're in the newly quite single, liking a bit of attention from dating apps, maybe having a fling with a younger man, like, good on you. Like, good on you. Like, enjoy it. Like, I just think you don't just kind of appreciate the seasons and the phases that you're in. Because they're all seasons and phases. Like, I'm not in that phase anymore. I can't be asked in the slightest, but it served a purpose at the time. And I'm in a different place where I'm more looking for like my forever person. Therefore, I'm willing to be patient and just be on my own. And that's fine. But there's nothing wrong with any of the phases.
Well done, Claire. You're amazing at what you do.
You are too, babe.
So happy Valentine's Day, mamas.